Hi, thanks for watching. I'm just making this video to emphasize the points that I've made on previous videos where I've discussed the possibility where I think the structures that are in question are pre-Ice Age. This is before the Younger Dryas, which is also known as the Quaternary extinction when you're talking about living things. Just want to basically try and emphasize the point with the stone cutting techniques with the certain megalithic structures that you can see. The fact that the people at the time with the materials they had couldn't have done it, or with the theory of the stones against stone theory, this is also due to the absolute precision which is involved. Okay, the reason I've put Machu Picchu slide in here is because of a guy named Jesus Gamarra who's from Peru, and he studied the forms of the way the rocks have been cut. He's put them into three categories which are associated with Inca mythology: Hanan Pacha, Unan Pacha, and the third is Ukan Pacha. But I think these categories can be used for the other sites around the world. Hanan Pacha, monolithic nature of the designs in stone. How forms are carved into the rock itself. Often you'll see shapes and designs cut into the sides of mountains, usually limestone. But also the same designs are found in basalt, diorite, porphyry, and also granite. Hanan Pacha also means first world. Unan Pacha, where the stones are made cellular, rather than the monolithic style of Hanan Pacha. This style of rock in Peru is mostly found at Sacsayhuaman, individually cut and shaped polygonal rocks. But later you'll see this style is pretty much worldwide. It also means second world. Finally, Ukan Pacha. This is using a hammer and chisel to shape the pieces, which you can see from the small marks and chips made against the stone. Ukan Pacha is also known as this world. Ukan Pacha was the type of stonework done by the Incas to recreate the work done by their ancestors, Unan Pacha, using smaller stones and mud as mortar to create the housing and terraces you can see. All these types of rock cutting techniques are not attributed to the Incas alone, as tourists are told when visiting Machu Picchu in Peru, but also to different cultures that existed prior to our recorded history. The word Ahu means platform on which the Moai are seated on. The Moai obviously being the statues, the torsos. But also recognise the stonework of the platforms, and in the next slide picture you will see the difference. All these platforms, the Ahus, are all supposed to be made by the people at the time on Easter Island. Ahu Vanapu, this one here, obviously it's not, you can see quite predominantly it's of an older time, and the style is also of a megalithic type of nature. I just want to basically emphasise the point of the stone cutting techniques used with certain megalithic sites, is that the people, we're told, at the time who supposedly created them didn't create them because they didn't have the tools to do such work. The other theory is the stones against stones theory to make the edges, which is complete nonsense, to be honest. We know this due to the precision. Humankind, we go back 300,000 years old. This is absolute scientifically fact, due to skull that they found. So the last 295,000 years since recorded history goes back to the Sumerian times, the age at the start of the first writing, which is from Sumer, cuneiform. We've been doing nothing at all for at least 295,000 years. It doesn't make sense, and this is why I'm making this video, just to show that the megalithic structures and the rocks that are used and found are of a far, far older origin. I'm going to touch now on several stories that have been told throughout the world, known as myths, and that the word myth is not what it seems, that it's been changed to what we know today is a myth is something to be complete nonsense story. Myths are stories about divine beings, generally arranged in a coherent system. They are revered as true and sacred, and are endorsed by rulers and priests, and closely linked to religion. Once this link is broken, and the actors of the story are not regarded as gods, but as human heroes, giants or fairies, it is no longer a myth, but a folk tale, where the central actor is divine, but the story is trivial. The result is religious legend, not myth. General sense of untrue story, rumour, imaginary or fictitious object or individual from 1840. However, the word myth is from the Greek term mythos, which actually means a story or set of stories relevant to or having a significant truth or meaning for a particular culture, religion, society or other group. Anything delivered by word of mouth, a word, speech, conversation or similar. A story, tale or legend, especially a poetic tale. This is where we find that the word myth is not what we have originally been taught, and things that are from ages past are always passed on by word of mouth, shamans, aborigines, etc. This is an extract from what's known as the Colburn Bible, not really a Bible as such, but known as, It's the works and the writings handed down by Egyptian priests, ancient Egyptian priests. It is known, and the story comes down from ancient times, that there was not one creation, but two, a creation and a recreation. It is a fact known to the wise that the earth was utterly destroyed once and then reborn on a second wheel of creation. At the time of the great destruction of earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompass her about. The dragon was frightful to behold. It lashed its tail, it breathed out fire and hot coals, and a great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind. The body of the dragon was wreathed in a cold bright light, and beneath, on the belly, was a ruddy-hued glow, while behind it trailed a flowing tail of smoke. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick darkened sky, all heaven and earth being made hot. The seas were loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful shrilling, trumpeting, which outpowered even the howling of the unleashed winds. Men stricken with terror went mad at the awful sight in the heavens. They were loosened from their senses and dashed about, crazed, not knowing what they did. The breath was sucked from their bodies, and they were burnt with a strange ash. Then it passed, leaving the earth enwrapped with a dark and glowing mantle, which was a ruddy lit upsight. The boughs of the earth were torn apart in great unreaving upheavals, and a howling whirlwind rent the mountains apart. The wrath of the sky monster was loosened in the heavens. It lashed out in flaming fury, roaring like thousand thunders. It poured down fiery destruction amid a welter of thick black blood. So awesome was the fearfully expected thing that the memory mercifully departed from man. His thoughts were smothered under a cloud of forgetfulness. Noah's Ark. God was said to send a great flood that swept across the earth, saving Noah and his family and ridding the world of wicked men, including those that were known as the Nephilim, born from the acts of interaction between the fallen angels that took human wives. He also is said to have saved each animal. Nuh's flood. The story of Nuh in the Quran is similar to the one in the Old Testament, especially until the part where Noah landed in the mountains and has replenished the earth. However, there are several differences. Among others, there are the following. In the Bible, only Noah and his family were saved. In the Quran, there are other believers who were saved. Additionally, Nuh's wife and the son were not saved. In the Quran, there is no story of Nuh building an altar and sacrificing clean beasts and fowls. The name of the place where Noah landed in the Quran is called Al-Judi, not Ararat. King Manu saved a fish that turned out to be Lord Vishnu, in short. Lord Vishnu predicted that the world would come to an end by a huge flood in 7 days, and requested Manu to build a huge boat and take 7 sages, 4 whales, 4 seeds of all plants, 1 animal of each, and told him that he would appear as a fish to propel the boat to Mount Himavan to survive the flood and take them to the next Yuga. After 7 days, the Lord appeared, and the king tied the boat to the fish by using the royal serpent Vasuki, and the fish took them all to Mount Himavan and kept them there until the flood was over. A story of a number of carpenters who became loud and drunk. The spirits were angry and decided to send a flood to kill them. One spirit took pity and let them know. One of the wise carpenters who was behaving decided to build a big boat and was saved. Sudra. The gods decided to wipe out man for some reason, but the water god Enki insisted to save mankind. He informed Sudra, a pious, god-fearing and humble king, of the dreadful decision of the gods, and asked him to save himself by building a very large boat. The long passage giving the details of construction of the boat is destroyed. When the text begins again, it is in the midst of describing the flood. The world was overpopulated by humans, so the god Enlil decided to send the first famine and drought at formulaic intervals at 1,200 years to reduce the population. But the god Enki decided to warn the hero ATRAHASIS, speaking through a reed wall, to dismantle his house and build a boat to escape the flood. So ATRAHASIS built the boat as instructed and boarded with his family and animals and sealed the door. The storm and the flood began. After 7 days the flood ended and ATRAHASIS offered sacrifices to the gods. Perturbed by the clamour of humans, the gods led by Enlil decided to let loose a flood on them. But the good god, warned Utnapishtim to build a large boat and load it with supplies and animals. After the boat was ready, the storm came. The boat survived the flood and rested on a mountain. Utnapishtim sent out a dove, it came back, as did a swallow, but when he released a crow, it did not. Enlil was very angry that a human had survived. After being bereft of the guidance of Prometheus, men and women grew so wicked. So Jupiter sent a great flood which destroyed them all, except one good man, Deucalion, and one good woman, Pyrrha. These two were preserved as being fit to live. The flood submerged all of Earth, except for Mount Olympus. After a long struggle, finally the three young gods, Vili, Ve, and Odin, killed Ymir. When Ymir fell, the blood from his wounds poured forth. Ymir's blood drowned almost the entire tribe of the Jotuns. Only 2 Jotuns survived the flood of Ymir's blood by building an ark. One was Ymir's grandson, Bergelmir, and the other was his wife. Bergelmir and his wife brought forth new generations and families of Jotuns. In Aztec mythology, Coxcox was the only male survivor of a worldwide flood. The Aztecs believed that only Coxcox and his wife survived the flood. They took refuge in the hollow trunk of a cypress, which floated on the top of water, and finally banked on a mountain in Kulkahan. The story starts with an argument between Optala and Olukan, and carries on. Olukan summoned the great waves of her vast oceans and sent them surging across the land. Wave after wave she unleashed, until much of the land was underwater and many of the people were drowned. Those that had fled to the highest land beseeched the messenger god Eshu to return to the sky and report what was happening to them. The Maya tribes who live in inland China talk about how God created the heavens and the earth and created man and woman. They also talk about the wickedness of humanity and God sending a flood. Immense flooding covered the earth, and only one family, the family of Fuhi, was saved. The righteous person who was saved was called Nura, and he built a boat very wide and vast. His family of 8 survived, along with males and females and pairs of animals. After the flood had receded, they offered sacrifices to God, and God gave them his graces. During the Dreamtime flood, Waramba, the Ark Gumana, carrying Noah, Aborigines and animals, drifted south and came to rest in the floodplains of Chilinbadu, where it can still be seen today. The white man's claim that it landed in the Middle East was a lie to keep Aborigines in subservience. Well, they are just a few of many, many stories of global worldwide catastrophes and flood myths, passed on by word of mouth. But where do we go from here? Taking the Egyptian view, in Abydos we have the King's List, which, when added up, the regnal years, goes back to 36,000 years. We also have the Sumerian King's List, which they take their own history back 240,000 years. But what we need is more scientific data just to confirm these facts. Or the facts that there was once a great civilization, namely us. We know that we've go back at least 300,000 years, Homo sapiens sapiens, but the evidence is here. There are the papers that are published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which are all mainstream. They're all peer-reviewed journals. Evidence for deposition of 10 million tonnes of impact spherules across 4 continents 12,800 years ago. Evidence from central Mexico supporting the Younger Dryas extraterrestrial impact hypothesis. I'll leave this up for a brief moment so you can pause and read it. But this stuff is out, and it's having a bit of a pushback at the moment because there are people who don't really want things like this to come out. They have vested interests, people who write textbooks, etc. But then Galileo, he struggled. He was imprisoned for saying the Earth revolved around the Sun. What this does mean is basically a complete rewrite of humanity as we know it. That we are not the actual pinnacle of everything, and that things move in cycles, that we were around before, and there'll probably more likely be another catastrophic event, hopefully not, but it will just reset the button, reset us. Thanks for watching, and thank you for tuning in and subscribing. Take care.